Well, good morning, Heike. Great to see you here in this
Good morning.
wonderful area of education. That's really beautiful. Sunshine, everything. I hope you're all well this morning.
Yes, I am.
First of all, I would like you to introduce yourself briefly and tell us a little about your background.
Okay. Well, my name in real life is Heike Philp, and in second life I'm known as Gwen Gwazi. And I'm the owner of Edunation, a co-owner of Edunation, together with Randall Sadler from the University of Illinois. And currently I'm located in Brussels.
Okay?
I've been Over the last 10 years, I've been involved in 3 EU-funded projects. Actually, I co-initiated all 3 EU-funded projects called Lancelot, Avalon, and CAMELOT. And Lancelot was all about teaching in a virtual classroom environment such as Adobe Connect or these web conferencing environments as you know them. And Avalon was about teaching in virtual worlds, and CAMELOT now this year is, the latest EU-funded project is about creating Machinima for language learning. And all 3 projects aimed at language educators. We've always developed a teacher training course, and this has been the highlight. And before that, I used to run a live online language school, and before that, I also was, worked in various areas of education. So I've been around language teaching and learning for about 20 odd years.
Wow. Yeah, well, that's quite a bit. I know you didn't mention that, but I know you used to teach Japanese. Is that right?
Well, yes, I taught Japanese for a couple of months in Second Life, and that was a wonderful experience because we contacted Japanese native speakers and asked them to tour us around the Japanese sites. And that was a great cultural highlight for me. Actually, I created also a blog about this one, Japanese culture in Second Life. And they took us to, underwater research stations and amusement parks and Japanese houses, temples, galleries. It was a wonderful experience to take a group of Japanese learners with that group of native speakers, and then always try to impress some Japanese vocabulary along the way, mostly to do with the cultural heritage, the ancient Japanese Edo
Okay.
buildings. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you didn't teach Japanese online, is that right?
Well, this
Or was
was
part of it?
teaching.
Okay.
Yes, because that's the great advantage of virtual worlds, that you don't have to stick to a classroom or a setting where you just sit and talk, but you can actually tour people. And the same happened to me when I taught a couple of years in the Berlin of the 20s Sim German.
Okay.
I also taught, by the way, in a brick and mortar language schools and taught in company and German as well as English.
Mm-hmm.
So I've tried and experimented with a whole range of settings.
Mm-hmm. And which levels did you teach there? I mean,
Well,
English and German.
mostly adults. Well, obviously in Second Life, all of the Second Life avatars that
Okay. Mm-hmm.
were part of the course, there are adults. But I've also taught school children or students via Skype, via Adobe Connect, via Second Life. So I've been trying to experiment with a lot of synchronous environments, but also taught in schools, in language schools, just ordinary with books. Yeah.
Okay. You have produced Machinima in the past, which was fantastic. And I mean, have you used videos in your teaching, or when did you start with your first Machinima?
Well, the first Machinima, I mean, I used to like very much events in Second Life, and I started recording these events because I felt it was precious. So like theater plays and what else? Well, and then from just the plain recording of events, I went into starting to produce a couple of years back, and that's when my great love for Machinima came about. And
Well, you said that you have been involved in virtual worlds for some time. And when and how did you get involved with virtual worlds, and why?
well, my very first Second Life experience goes back to I think 7 or 8 years now, and it was Edunation that caught my fancy when I first saw the island, which was then run by Gavin Dudeny, and I acquired my first plot of land and started building a language school. And that was years back, and then 3 years ago we decided to take over from Gavin Dudeny, and we created this beautiful community of language educators here on Edunation, and it's been a lively environment ever since. We run languages and the conference, and then we run regular training session meetings, and it's Carol Rainbow, who's very active here on Second Life, and many other Machinima crazy members of MachinEVO.
Yeah, would you like to explore a bit about MachinEVO? I mean, you have initiated it actually, so would you like to say something about that?
Well, MachinEVO is a regular 5-week training every January and February. It's organized by TESOL Convention. It's the EVO sessions, which attract some 2,000 or 2,000, more than 2,000 language educators every year. And there are several EVO sessions, and MachinEVO has been one of them. And so we've been, this year in the 4th year running, we've always come together as a group of people because Machinima production is basically a collaborative thing to do. You always need a small group of people to produce Machinima, at least 2, because you want to engage in a conversation. And we've seen this in the past. We've seen a great set of Machinima productions every year. In a matter of 5 weeks, people come up with beautiful, anything from learning French, learning English, learning Chinese, and Italian. And it's been a highlight every year since, for me personally. Now, MachinEVO led eventually to the development of the CAMELOT project because it was well received by language educators, and everybody was so proud of their own productions.
Mm-hmm. So, which advantages does 3D environment have compared to learning languages in the physical classroom? Would you like to name some scenarios that are difficult to realize in the physical world but could easily be set up in a virtual environment?
One of the scenarios that I mentioned is the Japanese cultural involvement that I've been experiencing. But also in the Berlin of the 20 sim, it was beautiful to engage the students in the day-to-day running of the Berlin sim, because the Berlin sim is a town which in this town things are happening. So this becomes a point of discussion where people meet and where people get engaged and even marry in an environment like this. And also when we met outside the virtual classroom environment, then for the social occasions. But in general, the 3D environments lend themselves to exploring and going out and visiting places such as galleries. And there's lots of settings, I would say. For example, a zoo in Second Life. I mean, how can you take your students to a zoo in the real world without with a lot of problems, I would say. And this is what we did, is we also toured Second Life together with the students, met at a certain place, and then went to other places.
That sounds wonderful. Generally, I mean, you've been in world and on virtual platforms for a long time. Which other technologies or platforms do you generally use for teaching or instructions?
I've used for teaching a language. I've used Skype. I've used Adobe Connect, and of course, Second Life. But in general, I would say what we did also during the web conferences was fascinating. Is we used Adobe Connect and then went into Second Life and screen shared the Second Life experience to those participants in Adobe Connect who were not able to enter the virtual world easily because of restrictions in hardware or software, in internet connectivity and so forth, and also the sheer level of skills that you need in order to navigate around Second Life. So I've been able to use Adobe Connect, what I call a window into a virtual world, to introduce people to Second Life. And in this combination, I've also used it for language teaching.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So,
yeah, I saw that what you just mentioned about combining Adobe with virtual worlds. I saw, for example, you mentioned Carol Rainbow, how she did an instruction session on Machinima in MachinEVO, where she had the Adobe to watch actually the actions that needed to be done for the settings and have people in Second Life. And, the combination, as you mentioned, is fantastic, really. Yeah.
yeah, it's almost like looking over the shoulder of somebody who's then
Absolutely.
able to do that.
Yeah.
And during the training sessions that we did on EduNations, that is what I regularly did, is I used Adobe Connect and then went along as the instructor was explaining and then opened the inventory or performed some tasks or some building tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And people could then see this. And
Yeah.
Carol has also created a number of wonderful Machinima which explain Second Life skills.
Mm-hmm.
And that is part of the CAMELOT course that's been developed, and she's done a fantastic job, because learning how to create Machinima always involves that some of the basics of Second Life skills have to be met. You have to know how to teleport from one place to the other. You have to know how to make friends, how to communicate, sometimes in private voice chat, sometimes in public voice chat. How to set up your voice is always a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then especially for creating your own avatar, to customize the avatar for the Machinima production, and to change one's outfit. All of these Second Life skills have been beautifully set in. Like Carol has produced a great set of Machinima, well, if you could call them instructive Machinima, in order to explain those Second Life skills to the participants.
Mm-hmm. Now, another question: how could you motivate teachers and students to create their own Machinima?
Well, I've never seen really teachers by themselves create Machinima, because, as I said, it's a collaborative event, and you always need a group of people. And so the machinimatographiers that are about in Second Life, like yourself, and you've experienced this, Christel, that you also joined MachinEVO for the first time and then learned how to produce Machinima, and then went about to create your own Machinima over the course of the next couple of years. And so it always needs kind of this training environment in order to initiate the skills and initiate the love for Machinima. And MachinEVO's been instrumental in that, and we've seen a number of people venture into this new field. Well, I call it a relatively new field for our language educators, and Machinima have not been around that long. So the skills of producing Machinima is still relatively new and challenging.
Mm-hmm. What do you think would prevent people from using Machinima in the language classroom?
I can't see much that would prevent them from using the Machinima. I mean, the production is one of the things, but the Machinima that have been created so far and are available for use in class, you need a projector. It's like showing any video. You don't even need internet connection because you can download the video beforehand for class, but you need to project it onto the screen of the students. Mostly when it's used in class. Machinima can also be something to learn by themselves, but it's a bit of work to put into a Machinima production, and so teachers are happy to present their own productions in class and then to get the students' feedback, which is great, and to see how they are,
Yeah.
like.
I mean, you mentioned showing videos in the classroom. So do you see a difference between using Machinima videos created in a 3D world and real-life videos?
I've seen a number of teachers use real-life videos like which you download from YouTube, sometimes just simply for entertainment or for introducing them to like for a warm-up or introducing them a certain theme and what have you. With Machinima, Machinima are customized language learning scenarios. That means that they have a purpose, they have a storyline, and they want to communicate a certain grammar point, or they want to communicate a certain story. And so to use Machinima in classes is something that is more involved. And this is why there is also the CAMELOT award that's been set out because this is the new know-how, I would say, is how to use Machinima in the language class, how to create activities around Machinima, because it really lends itself to the 3 to 5 minutes video to be used in the whole 1 hour lesson. And so activities around Machinima need to be created, and the lesson plans that I've seen so far been handed in for the CAMELOT award included so many wonderful activities to using Machinima in a classroom. And I want to give you an example that some teachers in the University of Istanbul created a Machinima that purposely omitted certain information, and in order to motivate the students to come up with possible explanations of why the story ends that way, or what was the reason why somebody was in prison, for example. And these activities, to create such activities around Machinima, is still the new challenge in Machinima production.
Yeah, but you just mentioned it, and I think that makes a big difference in my view when students are being involved in the creation of the Machinima, and it makes a difference whether the tutor teacher shows a video that is just taken from YouTube or whether students were involved in that. Would you share this?
To have really language learners involved in Machinima production, I've only ever seen one example, which is the one of Shalvin Corrigan, who helped their students to produce a whole set of Machinima, and they are obviously immensely proud. And there's a great deal of expertise as a teacher to go into that. With our project partner Tunde, he's encouraged his own university students to come up with Machinima, and they created also a whole set of, but they're teacher trainees. So as a language learner, to get into Machinima production, that is quite something. And I've seen examples of language lab where students engaged in recording their singing lesson even. So straightforward recordings of their own lessons gives them the possibility of excelling their language production in a certain manner. And the examples of Shelvin's groups have been fantastic.
Yeah, I totally agree. Sometimes, I mean, with Tunç's students, I heard this, and with others as well, that that the students sometimes encounter technical problems when they are engaging with 3D learning environments. Can you, has that happened to you a lot, or could you say something about that?
The technical problems in engaging with 3D learning environments is always the same. It's a steep learning curve even to be able to manage Second Life, for example, and to then on top of that have video production skills it's huge. I must admit that I've always been admiring the skills of those who produce Machinima.
I mean, if there are problems, and I know you are perfect, you are really great with technology, which solutions do you or could you offer to overcome technical problems?
Well, there's this great set of training that's been going on in MachinEVO and in CAMELOT, and to overcome technical issues in Second Life, it simply is a matter of immersing yourself into this environment and learning as much as you can. However, I've seen people be part of production teams, initially perhaps as avatars, characters who are role-playing a certain situation, and perhaps later on getting into the actual video production. I've also seen teachers within a matter of 5 weeks come up with beautiful productions by themselves. So I'm amazed at the speed. And not Tunç's group, for example, they only had 2 weeks, and they created amazing machinima, to be honest. But they've been around Second Life now also beforehand, I think a year. So it always depends on whether you do have 3D learning environment experience or whether you already have been around for a while. And many teachers have.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, you created.
I can also mention.
Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I can also mention that in order for Machinima to take place, you have to have a good storyline, a good script, but you also have to have certain settings, and this is where there's no limit in Second Life to provide any kind of scenario that one would like to use for Machinima production, and it's perfectly legal to do that if you honor the creator of this environment, and if you ask the creator of this environment beforehand whether you can film, and many agree. What we also have here on Edge Nations is a huge number of holodecks specially created to provide certain settings. For example, if you wanted to do a scene in a restaurant, you can go to Edunation and just res through the holodecks. The holodeck is a 3D environment that's purposely created here by Randall Sadler, and you can have restaurants or libraries or forest seatings and Castle Renoir and so forth. So bus stops, clothes shop, hotels, winter scenes, airports, cities, and all of these holodecks are freely available to use to produce Machinima.
Yeah. So, what genre of Machinima would you prefer, or do you think is the best-selling Machinima?
Well, I personally like narratives, but that is my preference. I've also seen great informative machinima, like your production, Christel, Why Second Life, for example, and which won awards, like so many of your machinima. The narratives that I'm referring to are, for example, Born to be a Musician, or The Ultimate Time, the Untimely Death of Peter Prophet.
Yeah.
Also,
Fantastic.
I've
Yeah.
produced a number of narratives for German teaching, involved some animal avatars, and so I personally like narratives.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw your videos. They're fantastic. Yeah. Would you prefer to use Machinima in the physical classroom to using them in virtual classroom?
If you refer to the virtual classroom as Adobe Connect, and I can say yes, there's beautiful extension called YouTube extension that allows to play video. Well, Adobe Connect plays videos anyway. And yes, in a virtual classroom this is beautiful, but also in a normal classroom setting it's always possible to show Machinima if a projector or an interactive whiteboard is present. That is, of course, the minimum requirement that one has to have.
Yeah, you were quite successful when integrating some Machinima into your English language lesson. I
Well, yeah, I experimented with
Yeah.
this, and also was inspired by some of the lesson plans of the CAMELOT Award. I adopted them to do my own activities, of course, but what I really enjoyed was when showing Born to be a Musician, which is a story of a boy growing up and getting old, and certain scenes where I asked the students to sit in a way that one of them could see the screen and the other person couldn't, and so the student, the language learner, had to explain what he was seeing on the screen to his fellow student, and that was a
Lovely.
great activity. Then
Lovely,
encouraged
yeah.
speaking activities. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mostly Machinima, as what I've sort of seen, how video has been used in class is mostly for listening activities.
Mhm.
And what I'm really interested is to use Machinima for speaking activities. And you
Okay.
can start
Yeah.
the video at a certain point and encourage the students to go ahead and freely elaborate, so what could be the end of the story, yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
and engage them in speaking.
So many people say that it's very difficult without mimic and gestures in a video for learning a language. And what is your view on that?
Well, I've seen great, really professionally produced language learning videos where the gestures and the setting, it's mostly the setting which is important to understand the dialogue. And our experience when teachers were showing their Machinima productions is that even though Machinima production is reduced in mimics and graphics, it's still acceptable if the context of the whole scenario conveys a certain meaning. And because context is so important to understand a language, that you see the language, yeah, in use. This is why Machinima holds great potential, even though the mimics and gestures aren't that great. I mean, there's only a lip movement, and sometimes we have some crying, and crying is the only gesture at the moment. I do see great potential, though, for future 3D environments that are a lot more into. I've heard last week I've heard about possible developments that using a webcam in order to produce facial expressions that are near to real life expressions that is been in the development at the moment.
Mhm.
In the case of Second Life, we're still restricted, but what the future holds, who knows?
Yeah, well, we will see. And do you think that cultural differences can be conveyed via machinima?
Absolutely. And I've seen beautiful productions. I've seen, for example, the videos that you also been involved in producing the cultural collision in Cairo, the market and the dinner, when conversations about one's salary are a matter of norm or not in some cultures, and how people responded to questions, how much do you earn? It was great. And also how to bargain at an Arabic marketplace. And I think they're great productions, and I would like to see more of them, to be honest, because cultural differences are a fascinating thing to explore in Second Life.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it is, let's say, more motivating for teachers to produce their own machinima, or have machinima provided by others? Is that the same, or does that make any difference? I mean, you have experienced both, haven't you? You have produced machinima and taught with them and taught with other people's machinima.
Yeah, I think there are some beautiful productions already about that give you a great sense of the potential of using machinima, and some of them are so professional that is wonderful to look at and wonderful to use in the classroom. And then when you start out with your own productions, you sometimes a little bit critical of your own and think the others are always better. No, but what I did also in machinima, in my own machinima, was I produced a set of machinima that had empty speech bubbles and actually didn't provide any text, but they provided a certain scenario, like, for example, sailing and sailing past the Titanic. And so to use those to encourage speaking activities again for the students, and to simply use them as an inspiration or as an input in certain sessions. I think the range of machinima which I've seen so far has just been astounding. So the there's a fascinating amount of creativity involved in them, and I think that has great potential to be further explored. I mean, we're only at the very beginning of it, but the machinima examples that we've seen so far are mind-blowing, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. So this is a clear answer to the next question I was going to ask you, and that was, how do machinima videos enhance language teaching? And I think they do, as you just explained.
I also heard of teachers, when they presented their own machinima, their own productions in class, even though the productions weren't quite as perfect and perhaps technically also challenging, the students are simply excited about them, and hearing that the teacher is able to produce such animated videos is a great, effect. And so it's a certain pride that goes with their own machinima, one's own machinima production, and you want to showcase it for everyone, and I think this is the great, beautiful thing. It's just one's own production, yeah.
Yeah, and also to see the pitfalls of the teachers. That makes the students laugh and enjoy,
Exactly.
I think. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Which kind of machinima videos do you think attracted your students most?
I think it's the narratives, but for example, I've also seen great machinima explaining what they're called, paraphrases, for example, cats and dogs idioms. Yeah, cats and dogs idioms, for example, what Carol produced,
and phrasal verbs.
The ASAPs, phrasal verbs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Conversations at a kiosk with nothing really to say. Also, the Aesop's Fable production series is wonderful. Little stories been played by characters, by animal characters.
How can you determine that the use of Machinima videos helps students to learn better than without them?
It's difficult to actually determine how much language is being acquired by watching a machinima. I think the great value in machinima is exploring the activities to use the video a little bit more than just for listening activities. And in order to encourage the student, eventually what the dream goal is eventually is to encourage the students to also join these 3D environments, which is still limiting. I mean, but this is the ultimate goal, is by showing them what not only how you can use 3D environments for this production, but also how to use these environments for language teaching and learning. And they lend themselves very much to it. It's a certain hurdle to get into because you need special hardware and you need a fast computer and a good graphics card and good internet connection and so forth. But obviously, if the students are able to then enter these 3D environments, they can explore and they can meet native speakers, which in some situations around the world when language learners are concerned is really, really difficult. Imagine in the middle of China you want to meet an American English teacher, English native speaker, and that is just really difficult. So we hope that Machinima production will encourage students to join 3D environments.
And do you think they will also add to the quality of language learning?
I think so, of course, because teachers customize the content of the Machinima product, and so they're able to use certain vocabulary and certain paraphrase and settings and everything that they would like the students to learn in this particular setting. I've seen the other day, a machinima that tried to convey 3 different styles of writings to the students. Now, I didn't think it was possible to convey writing styles with machinima, but the machinima that was produced fantastic by exploring 3 different letters to the same invitation, and the teacher's done a fantastic job of doing that with this.
Okay. Well, I have asked enough, but is there anything you would like to add from your side?
Yes, and I can say that so far in the last couple of years of what I've seen with Machinima to be developed is the potential of using Machinima in future is so much greater. I mean, just looking at the moment at the Minecraft craziness of young learners, how they communicate in this environment, and many of them do record their screen in order to show off their productions, and this is the potential. Also, I've seen at the Virtual World Best Practice in Education so many great examples of sometimes even just compiling a set of photographs in a machinima setting if there's a certain story, and it doesn't always have to be this live filming of events, but it can also be a compilation of pictures that you take in Second Life, also in a cartoon-like setting, that you can use in class. And so the potential is great. The visuals are fantastic. They're the productions are very creative, and I see a great future for Machinima.
Well, thanks a lot and for your time, and talk to you soon. Bye bye.